and welcome to the Art of Decluttering podcast. I'm your host, Amy Revell, and I'm very excited to have my first guest of 2026 with me today. I've got Dr. Rebecca Blackburn. Hi, Rebecca.
Hello, Amy.
Rebecca has done her PhD research paper on low consumption lifestyle and minimalism, and I am all over it and I've never, even when I was at university, I never marked up a document that I read as much as I marked up this document. Rebecca, thank you on behalf of our industry for putting the work into this paper. It's incredible.
Thank you.
So I thought we would start with an introduction that you wrote, and then I want to kind of get you to help lay the foundation. I said to you before, look, we could literally spend 5 or 6 weeks just talking about this, and I might actually do that, listeners. I might come back to this research paper over time. But this is the introduction that you wrote in your paper. We all need to consume to meet basic needs such as nutrition and shelter. But as the world becomes more affluent, a greater proportion of consumption is non-essential. Tell me a bit about that.
Well, I think probably since the 50s, the world has changed for a large percentage of people. And in terms of their income and ability to purchase. And as a consequence, people have been able to buy basically whatever they want. And with that has come problems. And so we've got to the point now where there's lots of people are just like, being overwhelmed by the material goods in their home.
And society has this buy more, consume more, you need more, happiness is in this. Whereas I think as we go through the paper, that's actually not the case.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there is a very strong cultural push that buying more will make you happy, or buying the new dress, the new tech thing, or whatever. My research found that people who consciously try and reduce their consumption are actually doing it because it makes them feel good. It increases their well-being. Yeah, so it's the opposite, really.
And that's a pretty good motivator. You've got these different research aims in the paper, and I thought if we go through each of them just to kind of lay this foundation. So the first question is, what environmental behaviors define minimalism?
Yes. So when I started this project, my supervisor was like, "Oh, minimalism's got, why are you interested in that? And it's got nothing to do with the environment." And I think the view was it was about that aesthetic white box, And so I was curious because I thought, but some people are reducing their consumption, so surely that has an environmental benefit. So my first study involved, I used an ecological footprint calculator, and I had a scale of minimalism. And what I found is minimalists did have a lower footprint. So yes, that's true. And although there was some subtlety, so there's a group called aesthetic minimalists, and they did not have a lower footprint.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
So the aesthetic minimalists then were more about what it looks like, whereas the other minimalists, I don't know what the other term would be, but for the rest of us, we actually have it impact right across our lifestyle.
I decided that there was probably two groups of minimalists, the eco-minimalists and the aesthetic minimalists. And aesthetic minimalists seem to be very focused on appearances, and presumably the reason I haven't investigated this, but I think the reason they had they didn't have a high footprint, they just had, there was no relationship with footprint. And that might be because there's churn. They buy lots of stuff and get rid of it. But eco-minimalists are people who are mindful about their consumption, and they also have few belongings, and they had a lower footprint. Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me. As a minimalist to a degree, I think our footprint, and we'll probably come to talk about this, but our footprint environmentally is lower. And then there's all these other benefits like financially, and so we'll come to that. The second research aim, the question was, what are the barriers and enablers to becoming a minimalist? So can you, give me the snapshot of that? We'll go into it a little bit further, but what's the snapshot of this, barriers and enablers?
Well, I think social norms were definitely a barrier. So perceptions that other people might think your house is weird because it's doesn't have much stuff in it. One person said a neighbor walked in and went, "Have you just moved in?" She went, no.
This is
Yeah.
how I live.
That's how I live, yeah. So I think that can um, stop people from doing it. But people who are willing to step outside that and reduce their consumption, they get all these benefits, like you said, financial benefit, like they're saving money, their well-being is greater. They just feel calmer and more organized. And then there's more time because they don't have so much stuff. They're not shuffling stuff around the house. They're not organizing it. They're not cleaning it. They're not insuring it. They're not,
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
there's a lot of flow on effect when the more stuff you have. You can live in a smaller house, if because you don't have so much stuff. And then yeah, and there was a few who ethical reasons were important. I had 15 study participants, and 2 had religious reasons. That was partly why, and then 2 it was environmental.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The third research aim question was what motivates people to adopt minimalism?
Yeah, so I think people start off just feeling overwhelmed by the stuff and how do I manage it? How do I keep it under control? And I think um, some people have found out about minimalism via books or blogs, like you, and um, uh, so that was a motivator for some, but then there was other people who it was like moving house and they're just like, oh my God, I do not want to do that again. Or having to deal with deceased estates. One person, she had 3 deceased estates within a year. Like, yeah, it was 2 parents and then a family friend. And it was just like, that just like really put her off. Like, why are we holding on to these things? People's
Yeah.
wedding presents from 30 years ago and stuff like that. And then there was a couple who also grew up in disordered households. So it was a kind of reaction to their childhood environment, and they wanted something else. Yeah. So
I
so it was
love that
a
there's
range of reasons.
Yeah, and I really like that because often, you can kind of feel like when there's this movement, everyone comes at it from the same place and everyone gets the same benefits. And actually, what you've discovered is people come at it for all different reasons. And the
Yeah.
benefits, they'll probably get the benefit they thought they were coming in for, but they're also going to get all of these other benefits that are so life changing that they move more into it because they're like, okay, if I can reduce my stress and increase my well-being and be better off financially and have more time, like, why wouldn't I do this?
Yes, that's right. Everyone who I interviewed, they were like, "Yeah, I'm never going back.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
this is the best way to live." Yeah, they're not going to change.
That's
Yeah.
really interesting. I think anecdotally, I would agree. It's very rare that I speak to someone who's adopted a minimalist lifestyle and has at some point gone, whatever, I'm just going to buy all the stuff. Like once you understand the benefits, it's so rare to go back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good. Okay, let's jump into some of the themes and sub themes. And
Mhm.
I think I will do some more episodes on these because these themes in and of themselves are so good. And I love that quite a few of them, I cover in some of my online courses. And so I was like, oh, yes, now there's like research that backs it up. So the first theme we talked about a little bit was the motivation, with the sub themes being greater well-being, financial benefits, more time, and ethical considerations.
Mhm.
Did you find that people came often with just one motivation, or they came sometimes with just like a tad of motivation, and once they actually started to experience it, their motivation grew? What was kind of the findings around motivation?
Yeah, so I think most people, it was about well-being. It was about just feeling more organized and feeling calmer and in their home. But then they found out, oh yeah, it's got other benefits, and like environmental benefits often was a secondary thing. So they'd start off and they'd notice, oh, if I bring in, like all this stuff comes in, then where does it go when I've finished with it? And so they become much more aware of the life cycle of goods. If you bring it in, you got to get rid of it. And there is no, it's always in existence, basically, you know?
Yeah.
So once you've got it, even if you take it to recycling or the tip or whatever, it's still fundamentally still in this world. Yeah. So I think it made people much more aware of that impact and then therefore became much more mindful. Like, do I really need this thing? You know, is it really important? Because not only is it going to fill up my home, but I'm also going to have to just get rid of it at the end of its life. Yeah.
One of the things you said I think is quite interesting is that environmental motivation is often secondary. One of the
Mm.
things that I find can be a barrier to entry on minimalism is an overly acute awareness and responsibility for the environment. Because then what you end up doing is keeping everything because you're so aware that it's going to end up in landfill and you want to find the perfect place to recycle your toothbrush or your bread tag or your plastics. You're laughing. Can you you agree?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. But I think what's curious is that I think there's a disconnect. They don't realize that about the bringing in. That they're worried about the
Yes.
getting rid of.
Yep.
They're not worried about the collecting of the stuff. And that's where the mind shift needs to happen. Realizing that the impact happens when if you buy especially new goods, you're creating a demand for that. I agree. It does slow some people down.
Okay. The second theme was around triggers. So you were talking about sometimes it's deceased estate, sometimes it's like that overwhelm. I really need to find a way that I can interact with the world without being completely overwhelmed by it. Sometimes it was learning about minimalism, having a cluttered childhood home.
Mhm.
Did the trigger need to be like rock bottom, or was the trigger just enough for someone to think differently? Like, what kind of were your understandings around that?
It was a range of things. I think for a lot of people it was gradual, but then maybe an event sort of tipped them over. Like, you know, they went traveling for 3 months and lived out of a wheelie bag and went, oh, I don't need that much stuff. I was like, oh, I came back home and I don't actually need most of this. Yeah, I mean, the deceased estate is, I guess that's a more distinct trigger, but often it coincided with, you know, reading more about it, hearing about it, seeing it, you know, on blogs and podcasts and things, and so I think it's sort of like a number of things line up, and then they go, actually, there's another way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And further on in the research paper, and I don't have it directly in front of me, you talk about that act of being an influence to other people. That often once
Mm,
someone adopts a minimalist lifestyle, it's not so much that they're evangelical. You said it's more that
mm.
they naturally impact and motivate other people.
Yeah. So Um, they they were all adamant that they were not going to uh, um, proselytize. They weren't going to convince other people to do it, and I thought
Yeah.
that was quite interesting. Everybody said that, but then they also at other points admitted, "Oh yeah, I have a no physical gifts policy," and some of my friends and family think that's weird, but I've decided to stick with it. And then a few years later, I find out that the family Christmas is now no presents for adults, or you know, so there's this
Yeah.
subtle cultural change
Yeah.
in the social dynamics, and you know, people walk into my house and they go, "Oh, I really like your house. It's so calm." It's sort of like do what I do, but you know, like it just people observe how you
Yeah.
behave, and then
Yeah.
they adopt those changes over time. So it's a gentle form of persuasion, I would say.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
kind form, but it is
yeah,
persuasion nonetheless. My form of persuasion is like have a podcast and tell everybody about it. But in my own personal life, I'm not going into people's houses that are cluttered and be like, oh my gosh, you need to get rid of this and da 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 da. Like this is very much to the people who want to hear it. But I think that you don't want to put pressure on other people, but you also want people to think and be curious and have like this dialogue of, okay, my kid has all these clothes. Why am I just going and buying them more rather than wearing the clothes they've got? Like you want people to start having these thought processes around quantity and consumption and
Mm.
consumerism and all that type of thing.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, there's this whole thing in social psychology about social norms, and people underestimate how much they influence others. That it's a known thing. We don't realize, but we do, and everybody influences everybody else. In lots of subtle ways. So if you're doing something in a positive thing, then yeah, you will be hopefully positively influencing
Yeah.
other people. Yeah.
And that kind of leads into the third theme, which is around minimalist practices. Um, and we've talked about some of them, like influencing others and aesthetic minimalism and environmental practices. We've kind of gone over that a little bit. But what I really, really liked is you had these 5 sub themes. This is like what the practice of minimalism looks like. We edit our possessions, we acquire less, we prolong product life, we have mindful acquisition, and we have generous and thoughtful disposal. I mean, I feel like I could talk about this, Rebecca, for months. Like those 5 points are incredible. Did those 5 that we just talked about, are they in order of like, this was like what came out on top, or was there a real combination of all 5?
You're asking if one was more
Yeah,
important?
like was edit possessions like the first kind of identifier of a minimalist practice, right down through to like thoughtful disposal?
Yeah, I probably edit possessions is the number one, without a doubt. But I guess what's interesting is that it's not just one activity. It's because there's no point in just editing things if you keep bringing stuff in at the other end. Otherwise, you're just at status quo, aren't you?
Yeah, so the mindful acquisition is very important in this process.
Exactly. So the mindful acquisition, the hanging on to things by repairing them, and then the thoughtful disposal, I think that also drives it as well, because like we were talking about earlier, it is a pain to do it thoughtfully and to do it properly. It takes time. I know, because I try really hard to recycle. I have like, we have this standard recycling, but I have these shoe boxes in my laundry of all the funny little things that I can recycle, the corks and the whatever. And yeah, it takes time. It really influences you. Like for instance, the other day, my husband needed to buy a new piano case, and because the zip had broken. And then he said, it's good, but what am I going to do with the old one?
It's your social influence, Rebecca.
But that's the thing. It influences everything. Like, do I need it in the beginning? Do I buy a quality product that's not going to break? They all influence each other.
That's so good. I think I can foresee some episodes coming up around that. The next theme was around values, which I think is I love that you covered it. I think it would have been easy to kind of assume the values and assume that people understood them. But the fact that you went into them, the 3 values that you identified was sense of enough. Like, oh my gosh, that is everything. That sense of satisfaction, then the sense of like, I'm okay with what I've got and I don't need to be keeping up with the people next door. So sense of enough, less concerned with social norms, which I
Mm,
think absolutely is true. Particularly around fashion, I find that is
mm.
a real standout. I have often said on the podcast, I don't get fashion in the sense that if you wore the same thing every time I saw you, I would not notice. I just wouldn't notice. I wouldn't notice. Someone said to me, I was at church on Sunday and apparently I was wearing the exact same outfit as a friend that I was sitting in front of. And we were talking afterwards and people were like, haha, you're wearing this. I hadn't noticed. I didn't even know what I was wearing, let alone what she was wearing.
Yeah.
So this less concern with social norms is hard, but really good.
Mm,
And the third one is the dislike of consumerism.
mm.
So let's go. Tell me about these values.
Yeah, so I think the sense of enough is interesting because it's not something that is common, I think, in our society. And the irony is it's actually often easier to have fewer clothes
Yeah,
because
totally.
because you remember what you have, you know what goes with what. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's easier.
You keep on top of the washing, your wardrobe's
Yeah,
less overwhelmed.
yeah. Yeah,
decision
yeah.
fatigue. Yeah.
That's a gradual thing, the sense of enough. It's something that happens over time and realizing what is enough. And I think maybe in my own personal experience, um, it's something that changes over time. Like you become
Mm,
more and more aware. Do I really
yeah.
need all these things?
Yeah. As you
Yeah.
become more confident and in who you are, and I would be really interested, and I know that you would probably have the data, but I don't think it's published, is around those people that had like environmental triggers or had religious triggers, whether their sense of enough actually was already a value of theirs that then came through in minimalism, rather than that sense of enough being, purely around minimalism. It might actually be like in who they are and where they sit in the world. And like, I think that would be really
Mm,
interesting.
that would be interesting. Yes, certainly. Um, one of the people who had a religious value, it was that the sense of enough was definitely part of that. It was
Yeah.
how much do I as an individual need? Yeah,
So good.
yeah,
So they're incredible values. And then the last bit to talk about is these challenges that you identified. So it's not like becoming a minimalist. It's like, great, I've made the decision. It's all free flowing because I've got less stuff. So life's just, peachy. Actually, there are 5 challenges that you identified. I'll go through them and then I'd love you to talk about them. So the first one is managing the influx of goods into the home. That's a challenge. And I amen to that. That is really hard. Other householders' possessions? Oh, yeah. If you are not on a household journey to minimalism, I think that would be really tricky. Another challenge is consumerism and marketing. So just this kind of going against the world is a really challenging thing.
yeah,
Norms around gift giving,
yep.
because that then has these underlying values in it, I think. And another challenge is like, how do I declutter? What's the process like?
The consumerism is challenging. Like one of the participants said, yeah, I'm super aware of the influence of what you get through social media and so on. The other day I saw a cute little dress on Instagram for my daughter, and I was like, oh, it's so cute. And so she's on one hand aware, on the other hand, she notices being influenced, and it's and I found that quite a few people had actually lowered their use of social media as a solution. Like it's just like, well, I just want to stop seeing the
Yeah.
ads and
Yeah.
influence,
And
because
I've
it
done
is.
that too, Rebecca.
Yeah,
I've and
yeah,
and that is part of my sense of enough.
yes,
That's one
yes.
of the outworkings of the practices of the sense of enough. Yeah, interesting.
There's always that little bit I might miss out if you subscribe to a fashion newsletter or whatever. You're like, oh, I might miss out. I might miss that. But the thing is there an infinite amount of things that you might miss out on? So are you going to try and get them all, or are you going to try and get none of them? Like
Yeah,
which
yeah.
side of are you going to go? Yeah,
Well, in terms of that balance of like which side are you going to go, I want to finish up with this. And these were kind of the outcomes or the benefits of living a minimalist lifestyle. There was greater well-being, financial benefits, more time, ethical considerations. So I was like, I mean, that's a pretty good motivator. If you know you're going to feel good, you're going to have more money, you're going to have more time, and what you're doing is good for the world around you. Like that's what you then have to weigh up against, I guess, that consumerism and marketing is. And so talk to me about that. And do you have any insights how to keep these benefits front of mind when there are billions of dollars being pumped into marketing and consumerism?
one of the big benefits is the synergy of your value. Like you feel like you're actually living your values. And I think that a number of people mentioned that they felt like, oh, at last I'm more aligned with my values, being mindful and enjoying that peace and calm that you get in your home. And when you sit down and you look around and you're like, oh, it's really peaceful and calm. And and I wasn't always like that.
Yeah,
you,
because
you
when
know,
you've got
I mean,
yeah.
and I mean that for myself. I used to be a bit of a mess monster.
I think when you've got that house that's a bit calmer, or the opposite, when you've got a house that's quite cluttered, your stuff is always telling you what you need to do. You should clean me. You should, tidy me. You should pack me up. You should maintain me. You should look after me. You should use me. All of these things, all of these shoulds are coming at us. Whereas when you sit in a calm environment, like I look around and the thing that's shoulding is my houseplants are like, can I have a little bit of water? Like that's kind of the extent of the shoulds. Maybe I should stack the dishwasher, but every home has to stack the dishwasher. Yeah, it's an interesting way to kind of see how you feel in your home with that well-being.
Sometimes people talk about, how you go to a coast house or a hotel or whatever, and it's like it's all so peaceful and calm, and can you take that feeling back home? And that's because it's really uncluttered. That,
Yeah.
like even at a coast house, they'll have, 2 saucepans, 1 mixing bowl, 5 forks, 5 knives, sometimes not quite enough, but, you have to make do. Sometimes you have to make your scones in a saucepan, but, I've done that.
But you did it, right?
But I did it, and that was what
Yeah.
was interesting. I wanted to make scones, so I used the saucepan as the mixing bowl. I used a wine bottle as the rolling pin, and then I wanted to whip the cream, and there wasn't a beater or anything, so I stuck it in a glass jar with a lid and shook it.
And that worked.
And it worked just about the same amount of time as a hand beater.
Oh, Rebecca.
But you see but it kind of, okay, that's a bit extreme, but it points out that we often don't need everything.
Yeah. The innovation, the creativity, the resourcefulness of minimalists is incredible. Because when you see a problem, the solution is not just, I will buy the solution that the world tells me to that problem. You actually start to think a little bit more like, could I fix it? Do I even need it? Like you start to ask all these questions. Maybe you just need to shake your cream in a glass jar. Do you know what? I reckon there will be people that are like, I'm totally going to try that.
I must admit, I didn't know it would work, and I was surprised. It really wasn't that hard.
That's incredible. I love it. So I'm just going to finish off with a sentence that you wrote. We found quality evidence that suggests minimalism meets all 3 needs of feeling competent, which is pretty good. They seem to arise from feeling better organized and less overwhelmed due to owning less. Feelings of autonomy seem to arise from better control over finances, giving participants freedom to start a business, pay off mortgages, or be debt-free despite a lower income. Like competence and autonomy are really important human values, and there's qualitative evidence that minimalism helps you achieve that.
And that's
as well as all the other good stuff.
And that's what increases your well-being. When you have things like autonomy and competence, you have greater well-being. Yeah.
So good. Rebecca, again, like I'm so grateful that you spent what I would imagine was hundreds of hours on this thesis and this PhD, and you know that at least one member of the public has read it top to bottom multiple times with a highlighter. And I did show you before we started recording what my marked up document looks like. I love it so much. I mean, I had notes everywhere and I was like, it's so valuable. Are people able to read it? Am I able to put a link so other people can read it, or is it more of a private document? How does it work?
Yes, it's part of my thesis. Ultimately, it should be published in a journal, but I haven't got there yet. But it is published in my thesis, so yes, you can put that up. Yeah,
it's really good, listeners. Like if you're just looking for I want to solidify what I think about minimalism, or I want to just explore like what are the other benefits. I mean, you can go back and listen to 500 episodes on me, or you can read Rebecca's paper. Like it is exceptional, and I know that there'll be plenty more podcast episodes that come out of it. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. It's been an incredible episode. I just want to go back and listen to it, let alone the fact that it gets to go out to all my community. Listeners, there will be more. I will be referencing this paper and pulling some ideas out of it to share with you in greater depth over the coming months. But until next week, enjoy the freedom.